Imagine you're sitting down to take a test.
Okay.
You've got your number 2 pencil, you flip over the paper, and instead of like math equations or vocabulary questions, there is just one single prompt.
Oh, boy.
Right. It just says, prove that you exist.
Wow. Yeah, how do you even begin to score that?
Exactly. I mean, we spend so much of our lives absolutely obsessed with metrics. We love tests that put us in a neat little box, you know?
We really do.
Like we test our IQ or cognitive intelligence just to see how our raw brain power stacks up against the rest of the room.
Right.
And we evaluate our EQ, our emotional intelligence, to gauge how well we read a room and empathize with other people.
Sure.
But what if we are completely missing the most important metric of all? Like, what if the metric that actually defines who you are at your core isn't about what you know, but about something entirely different?
It really is a fundamental blind spot in how we view human capability. I mean, we focus so heavily on our processing power and our social grace, but we completely neglect the very mechanism that makes us unique individuals in the first place.
And that brings us to the source material for today's deep dive. We are unpacking a really fascinating paper presented at a 2026 philosophy conference in Athens, Greece.
Such a great paper.
Yeah, it was written by Tennyson Samraj, and it's titled Belief Quotient as the Matrix of Doxastic Intelligence.
Quite a mouthful.
It really is. So our mission today for you, the listener, is to figure out exactly what a belief quotient or BQ actually is and, why it might just be the ultimate measure of human intelligence.
And how understanding it could completely change the way you look at your own life choices.
Okay, let's unpack this. We know IQ is cognitive, EQ is social, but this paper introduces BQ, which it calls doxastic intelligence. What does that actually mean?
Well, the word doxastic simply relates to belief.
Hmm.
So doxastic intelligence is, it's the intelligence of believing.
Okay.
Think of it this way. If IQ is about your relationship with cold, hard facts,
Right.
and EQ is about your relationship with other people, BQ is about your intellectually honest relationship with yourself.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's the internal dialogue where your distinct self speaks to your soul. The paper essentially argues that true intelligence isn't just about thinking correctly about the world.
Yeah.
It's about believing intelligently about your place in it.
Believing intelligently. I mean, that phrase almost sounds like an oxymoron to a modern audience.
It really does.
Because we're so conditioned to think that intelligence is strictly about, knowing provable facts. So to really get this, we have to separate knowing from believing.
Exactly.
Let me challenge this a bit to make sure we're on the same page.
Go for it.
If I hold out an apple and drop it, it falls to the ground. I don't choose to believe in gravity, right?
Right.
I just have to accept it because it happens every single time. So how is this BQ concept any different from just observing and understanding the physical world?
What's fascinating here is exactly that distinction. The author draws a very sharp, deliberate line between what he calls epistemic truths and existential truths.
Okay, epistemic versus existential.
Right. Gravity is an epistemic truth. It has an empirical justification. You can measure it, test it, verify it.
Yeah, drop the apple, it falls.
Because of that, your acceptance of it is mandatory. You don't get a say in the matter. Gravity doesn't care about your beliefs, and it doesn't take intelligence to believe in it. It just is.
Right. It forces itself on me.
Exactly. I mean, traditional philosophy defines knowledge as justified true belief.
Sure.
But the paper argues this definition is actually incomplete because it treats all justification as if it has to be empirical, like a math equation.
Okay, so where do the existential truths come in?
Well, existential truths are what the paper calls phenomenological conjectures. These are things like the meaning of life, the existence of a soul, or, moral absolutes.
Whoa, hold on. Phenomenological conjectures. Let's translate that for a second, because that sounds like something you'd need a PhD just to pronounce.
Fair point. Fair point. Phenomenology is just the study of your subjective lived experience.
Okay.
The things you feel and experience from the inside out. And a conjecture is just a conclusion formed on the basis of incomplete information.
Right, like an educated guess.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
a phenomenological conjecture is a truth about your lived experience that you cannot put under a microscope. You cannot mathematically verify the meaning of life.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Right. Because these truths are unfalsifiable. Accepting them is not mandatory. It is volitional. You must consciously choose to believe them.
Ah, because there is no scientific formula that can, hold a gun to my head and force me to accept a moral absolute.
Precisely. And making that choice is what the author calls a justified belief decision.
A justified belief decision.
Yes, establishing an epistemic truth, like gravity, gives birth to knowledge. But establishing an existential truth gives birth to a believer.
Oh, like that.
BQ is the matrix that measures your ability to make those conscious, justified decisions about things you cannot empirically prove.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Epistemic truth is a mandatory fact. Existential truth is an active choice. But wait, if I'm making a choice that isn't based on physical evidence, what exactly is doing the choosing?
Ah, right.
I mean, my brain is literally just a lump of wet tissue. It's like 65% water.
True.
How does wet tissue make a leap of faith?
Well, you've just stumbled into the ultimate mystery of neuroscience and philosophy. It's often called the hard problem of consciousness.
Oh yeah, the hard problem.
And the text introduces a really powerful metaphor here to address it. It suggests we shouldn't just look at the brain as a biological computer, but rather as a chrysalis.
A chrysalis, like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly.
Yes.
But how does that explain how meat makes a thought?
Think about physics. When you split an atom, you release physical energy.
Right.
That energy manifests as heat, motion, radiation. We understand that as mass-energy equivalence. The paper proposes a similar mechanism for the brain, a neural mass consciousness equivalence.
Oh, wow.
The brain acts as this biological chrysalis. The intense friction and processing of biological neural mass transforms into a totally different state, which is consciousness.
Wait, really?
Yeah. And just as atomic energy manifests as heat, this consciousness manifests as intentionality, subjectivity, and freedom. The physical brain essentially radiates the immaterial mind.
That is wild to think about, that our subjective experience, like my internal monologue right now, my freedom to choose, is essentially the radiation given off by this biological neural metamorphosis. But the author doesn't just stop at the human brain, right? They zoom way out.
They do, yeah. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the paper takes this concept to a cosmic scale. It argues that if the universe has a beginning, there must have been a timeless conceiver, perceiver, and observer.
Like a consciousness before the universe.
Right. This goes beyond just our local consciousness inside our heads. The author points to a non-local mind that exists completely beyond space, time, and matter. In fact, it argues space and time only exist because of consciousness, not the other way around.
Meaning consciousness came first, and the universe is the result of it. Not like the standard scientific narrative that the physical universe was just sitting here cold and dead for billions of years.
And then consciousness just randomly popped up out of the primordial soup by accident.
Right. And for you listening, this isn't just some abstract philosophy to glaze over. It has profound personal implications.
Huge implications.
It means your consciousness is not some evolutionary accident. It is fundamental to the architecture of reality itself.
Yeah.
And because consciousness is fundamental, freedom is fundamental.
Yes. As the text puts it, to choose is to be conscious, and to be conscious is to choose. You cannot separate the two.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. If we are forced by the very nature of our consciousness to make choices, what are the ultimate choices we actually have to make?
Well, the paper identifies three massive existential choices, what we could call the big three belief decisions.
The big three. Okay, let's hear them.
The self, freedom, and God.
Let's start with the self. I think most people walking down the street just assume they are a distinct individual.
Sure, it feels obvious.
But the text brings up identical twins to challenge this. Twins have the exact same DNA, yet they clearly have two completely distinct selves. So my DNA doesn't equal myself.
Right.
The paper uses a specific word here, subsisting. Can you unpack that?
Gladly. Because it's a brilliant distinction. We understand things that exist, right? A table exists, your physical body exists. It has a location in space and physical mass.
Okay.
Then there are things that subsist. These are abstract concepts like the idea of a triangle or the rules of chess. They're real, but you can't touch them.
So the mind subsists.
Yes, the mind subsists. But the self, that conscious eye behind your eyes, it doesn't exist like a table. And it doesn't just subsist like a mathematical concept. It subsists.
Okay, let me try an analogy here to see if I'm tracking.
Go ahead.
So existing is like the hardware of a computer, the monitor, the keyboard. Subsisting is like the software code, the programming that makes it run. But subsisting is like, wait, is it the actual user sitting in the chair playing the video game?
That is a perfect analogy. The self subsists as the irreducible condition for human experience. It is the user playing the game.
Wow.
It appears at birth and disappears at death, leaving every physical atom of the body perfectly intact. You can put someone in an MRI machine and see if their brain is alive or dead, but the MRI cannot locate the self.
Because it's not hardware.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Because of that, the self is technically an unfalsifiable conjecture.
Uh-huh.
You actually have to make a justified belief decision to believe in your own distinct individuality.
You literally have to choose to believe that you were you.
That is a trip. But wait, I'm stuck on something. Let me push back on this.
Okay.
You're saying myself isn't my biology. But if you alter my brain chemistry with medication, or, if I have a few too many drinks, my personality completely changes. Doesn't that prove the self is just a physical chemical reaction? It's a great challenge. But the paper would argue that altering the chemistry alters the lens through which the self interacts with the world.
Oh, I see.
Going back to your video game analogy, if your monitor breaks and the colors go crazy, the game looks completely different. But the user, sitting in the chair, the self that subsists, hasn't changed. The observer is still there, just dealing with the distorted interface.
Wow. Okay, the user remains. I like that. So the second of the big three belief decisions is freedom. And the paper leans heavily on the French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre here.
Yes, Sartre argued that consciousness is not a thing. It has no mass. And because it is immaterial, it is indeterminate. We are fundamentally free to choose what we direct our consciousness toward.
Like, I can think about whatever I want.
Exactly. You can think about a table, a math equation, or a flying horse. You have absolute freedom of focus, and you cannot renounce it. You are, as Sartre famously said, condemned to be free.
And the ultimate proof of this freedom, according to the text, is the most extreme choice we have, right? The choice between life and death.
Yeah, it's heavy but true.
The author points out that birth is an imposition. We didn't ask to be here. But because we possess the absolute freedom to end our own lives at any moment, life itself ceases to be an imposition.
Right.
To continue living is an active daily choice. The paper mentions Leo Tolstoy, noting that for him, choosing to live despite the suffering of the world was fundamentally a decision to believe in something.
It's the ultimate volitional act.
Yeah.
It carries so much weight. Only creatures aware of both being and non-being have to make the ontological choice to live. And if you choose to live, you are forced to choose how to live.
Which brings us to the third, and probably most heavily debated, major belief decision, God.
Yes.
And I want to be very clear for our listeners here. The text approaches this with strict philosophical neutrality. It treats both atheism and theism with equal philosophical weight.
Yes, that's a very important point.
Neither is presented as a default empirical fact. Both are defined as justified belief decisions. Like, let's say I'm an atheist. I might look at the suffering in the world and make a justified decision to disbelieve. If I'm a theist, I look at the universe and say, well, someone must have started this. And I make a justified decision to believe. But I have a huge pushback here.
Okay, let's hear it.
If people genuinely just want proof to settle this once and for all, why wouldn't a supreme being just appear and show us? Case closed.
It's the oldest question in the book. To answer it, the paper breaks down the difference between de dicto necessity and de re identity.
Okay, let's translate those terms before we get lost in the weeds.
Sure. De dicto is about the necessity of a concept. Let's use a foot race. It is a de dicto certainty that the fastest runner will win the race.
That makes sense.
That's a conceptual necessity, even if we don't know who that runner is. Now, de re is about the specific identity, knowing exactly who the fastest runner is, pointing at them and saying, that's the winner.
Okay.
The author argues that the existence of the universe logically demands the de dicto necessity of God, a timeless creator. But we do not have the de re identity of God. God remains invisible.
But again, why stay invisible? If God parted the clouds right now and waved at us, wouldn't that solve it? We'd have the de re identity.
No, and here's why. Pay close attention to this because it's brilliant. Even if a being appeared before you right now, parting clouds and throwing lightning bolts, you would only be observing its physical manifestation.
Okay.
But God's essence, attributes like infinite love, immortality, timelessness, is non-reductive. You cannot put immortality under a microscope. You cannot mathematically verify infinite love.
Ah, I see. So even if I'm looking right at this miraculous being, I can't empirically prove that it is actually immortal or the timeless creator of the universe.
Right.
It could just be a really powerful alien with like really good special effects.
Exactly. You would still be forced to make a volitional belief decision. You would have to say, I choose to believe that this being standing before me actually possesses the non-reductive essence of God. Empirical proof of existence is not proof of essence. Therefore, belief in God or disbelief in God will always, inevitably, remain a choice. You can never escape doxastic intelligence.
That completely flips the script on the demand for physical evidence. Okay, so we've covered these massive, heavy existential choices. We've chosen to believe in ourself, our freedom, and we've made our call on the divine.
Yes.
But if I'm listening to this right now on my morning commute, I'm probably thinking, okay, I don't have time to philosophize about my existence. I just need to get to work. How does this actually apply to my Tuesday? How is this BQ actually structured?
Well, the author provides a very clear formulation for the BQ matrix. It's expressed as QI, AI, JI, which leads to BQ.
Sounds like an algebra test.
It's more of a philosophical calculus.
Yeah.
QI stands for questions, the metaphysical, everyday questions life forces upon us.
Okay.
AI stands for answers, the phenomenological assertions or claims that society or culture throws at you. And JI stands for justified belief decisions. You confront a question, you evaluate the answers, and you make a justified belief decision for or against that claim. The quality of that iterative process determines your belief quotient.
Okay, let's ground this. Let's do a silly one first just to test the formula. So, question. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
Classic.
Answer. Well, the culinary world claims it's meat between bread. My justified belief decision. No, it's its own category. Boom, I use my BQ.
A bit trivial, but conceptually, yes. You confronted a question, evaluated claims, and made an internal decision. But the paper focuses on the existential weight of these decisions.
Let's do a real one then.
Let's take the real-world example from the text. Morality. It's one thing to look at a moral statement like thou shalt not kill. You can process that as an epistemic fact.
Meaning, I can acknowledge that society has written this rule down on paper and made it a law.
Right. But knowing the law exists doesn't define your doxastic intelligence.
No, it doesn't. Acknowledging a rule is just processing data. The existential truth, the high BQ move, is internalizing that rule and making the conscious, deeply personal declaration, I will not kill.
Exactly. It's the difference between knowing a rule exists out in the world and choosing to make it your own personal absolute. And the paper distinguishes between two grades of how we live these decisions out: strong BQ and weak BQ.
Well, let's break those down.
Someone with a weak BQ might make a belief decision internally. They might address the questions and accept an answer, but they never define it or defend it in their words or their actions.
So they just drift along.
Yeah. They say they value honesty, but they lie when it's convenient. That creates massive cognitive dissonance.
The friction of not living what you believe.
Right. But someone with a strong BQ makes a belief decision and then actively defines and defends it through how they live their life. Their paradigm dictates their actions.
They walk the talk.
They avoid that cognitive dissonance. They achieve an authentic life because their internal beliefs and external actions are perfectly aligned.
So what does this all mean? It means your BQ is essentially your philosophical backbone.
Precisely.
But I have to ask about the elephant in the room whenever we talk about intelligence these days. Artificial intelligence.
Oh, yes.
AI is getting exponentially smarter every single day. If BQ is just a matrix of evaluating questions and answers to reach decisions, couldn't we just feed all the philosophical texts ever written into an advanced AI, let it compute the most logical pathways, and eventually have an AI with a massive, off-the-charts belief quotient?
This raises such an important question about the limits of technology.
Yeah.
And based on the framework of this paper, the answer is a definitive no. AI can never have a belief quotient.
Wait, why not? It processes information a billion times faster than we ever could.
Because it completely lacks doxastic intelligence. Remember what we said about consciousness being a chrysalis?
Right.
That friction of biological web tissue transforming into subjective experience. AI doesn't have that chrysalis. It is entirely reductive. It operates solely within the realm of epistemic computation.
Oh, I see.
It lacks the phenomenological givens of intentionality, subjectivity, and genuine freedom.
Going back to our analogy, it's just hardware and software. It doesn't have a self that obsists. It's not a user playing the game.
Precisely. An AI cannot experience the existential dread of confronting its own mortality. It doesn't have to make the Tolstoy choice of whether or not to continue living.
That's a great point.
It cannot make a volitional choice to believe in an unfalsifiable conjecture because its entire architecture is built on verifiable data and algorithms. It can spit out epistemic truths all day long, but it cannot make a volitional existential choice.
Wow.
Belief requires a self, communicating with a soul, taking a leap into the unprovable. A machine simply cannot do that.
So the very thing that makes this process so messy, so full of dread and difficulty for us, our subjective, unprovable experience, is exactly what makes us uniquely capable of doxastic intelligence.
Yeah.
It's not a bug in the human system, it's the main feature.
It is the defining feature of the human condition.
Which brings us to the end of our journey today. Let's recap this for you, our listener. We started by looking at the metrics we usually use to judge ourselves. IQ shows how you think compared to others.
Right.
EQ shows how you relate to others. But BQ, your belief quotient, is your honest dialogue with your own soul. It's the profound realization that you are ultimately defined not by the empirical facts you were forced to know, like gravity, but by the existential truths you courageously choose to believe.
And if building a strong BQ relies entirely on an intellectually honest dialogue between your distinct self and your soul, I want to leave you with this to chew on.
Let's hear it.
In today's world, with algorithmic feeds and endless media constantly pumping epistemic facts and manufactured outrage directly into our retinas, are we losing the silence required to actually hear that internal dialogue? Is the modern world accidentally engineering an environment that lowers our doxastic intelligence by doing all the choosing for us?
A chilling thought and the perfect place to leave it. If you never sit in silence, how can yourself ever speak to your soul? Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. Take some time today to put down the phone, sit in the quiet, look at the choices you've made, and examine your own BQ matrix.